Hey everyone, Wesley here for the Seed of Life, coming at you with the final episode of our Love of God series about sex. I've been waiting for this one. So, what does sex say about God? What does it say about the love of God? I think for Christians, sex has often been this weird thing which is there, and they don't really want to talk about it because it's kind of weird and it's kind of has this taboo vibe around it. But it's here, it's part of creation, it's part of human life, and it's a very special part of human life, a very joyful and ecstatic part of human life. So why is that? Why is sex such an amazing experience that a lot of people pursue on its own? In Greek, you have various words to describe love, and the type of sexual, intimate love is described with the word eros, which does not appear in the New Testament, but it does appear in the Old Testament, the Greek version of the Old Testament, in the Song of Solomon, which is an entire Bible book about sexual love. And eros is also never used of God, that God has that type of love towards humanity, for example. So to describe it, it's the physical, sexual love, the attraction between a man and a woman. So if God himself doesn't express this sexual love, then what does this sexual love between a man and a woman, what does that tell us about God? Or what can it teach us about God? Well, if we go to Ephesians 3, we have a beautiful prayer of Paul there, and he ends up this prayer with, "To know the love of Christ that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled with the fullness of God." So there he says, knowing the love of God leads to experiencing the fullness of God in your life. To be, you could say, completely filled with Him. What's interesting about this is that knowing is also a word that is used for sexual intimacy. For example, with Adam and Eve, when they had sex, it says Adam knew his wife. So this is very interesting, that here in Paul's prayer it says knowing the love of God is experiencing His fullness, and knowing is also used of this physical intimacy between a man and a woman. It also says that when a man and a woman have sex, that they become one flesh. So there is this thing about unity that sex creates. Also in the New Testament, we have a kind of a different version of that, which says he who is joined to the Lord is one spirit with him. So this new spiritual reality of being one spirit with Jesus Christ, which is through his blood, because we have been born again in unison, in unity with God. You could say that sex is a mirror of that, because there it's becoming one flesh, and now we are becoming one in spirit. So Adam knew Eve, they are one flesh, and now we know God, we know the love of God, and we become one spirit with Him. If you see this parallel between these two, then it becomes even more interesting to see that sex is one of the most, you could say, ecstatic, joyful, blissful experiences you can physically have. So I would say that sex is a reflection of the absolute bliss and joy and ecstasy that comes from two beings becoming one. So I think sex reflects, in a way, the ecstasy and the joy of oneness. Like the three persons in a Godhead that love each other, that fully know one another, and God is good. Life is good. It is extremely good, extremely joyful. Jesus talks about let my joy may be in you. And God using sex, the moment when a man and a woman become one, as this extreme joyful experience. I think it refers to when we fully become one to God, one with God. If we fully connect, if we're fully one, then this has the same joyful, ecstatic experience in the spirit that it enables. So it shows that oneness, becoming one, with sex it's in the flesh, and the relationship with God it's in the spirit, that oneness is such a beautiful, powerful, joyful thing that we can see it's God's pursuit to unite himself to humanity, to have unity. We see Paul in his letters, be of one mind, be of one spirit. It is also interesting that during sex, when a man climaxes, like his little most joyful moment, that is also the time when the seed is released, when new life is released. And I think that is a beautiful parallel or a beautiful metaphor of what baptism does. When somebody dies to himself and then he's born of God, you could say God's seed comes in him. I think that same moment we see in the Bible that And heaven rejoices when a sinner repents. So it also teaches us, I think, that when new life is given, when a seed is planted, when that happens, that is an extremely joyful moment for heaven. It's an extremely joyful moment for God. So, sex. What do we learn? Sex is, in a way, a reflection of how good it is to become one together, and how good it is that a seed, that new life, can spring forth. You didn't think about sex like that, did you? Well, what do you think? Do you agree? Get in the scriptures, talk to God, see if there's any sense to this message. And at the same time, we'll wrap up this series on the love of God. Of course, there's a lot more to say about love, and there's a lot more to say about God and God's love. But I hope in this short series that you saw a couple of different facets to see how beautiful the love of God is, and how beautifully it's woven into our experience as human beings. And I hope you will learn to receive His love more and to express it more to other people. See you in the next series, guys.